The Associated Press did some very rigorous and detailed work on the ground in Gaza to try and figure out the casualty numbers in the last round of fighting. Now, the facts are unfortunately not unexpected, but they are quite depressing. So first, let's go to the UN. They say, quote, according to preliminary UN figures, at least 1,483 Palestinian civilians were killed in the war. 66% of the overall death toll of 2,205. Now, let's pause here for a second. That's absolutely devastating. But perhaps even a crazier fact is that we feared it may have actually been worse, that the numbers at the time in the middle of the fighting, when they tallied it during the middle of the fighting, it was about 80% of the deaths in the region were civilian deaths. So there's something that's really gross and unsettling about coming out here and saying, well, it's only 66% civilian deaths. It's so obvious that both of those are unacceptable, that it should be nowhere near this number. Now, the AP did great research as well. They found the following, quote, children younger than 16, 280 of them were killed. 280, including 19 babies and 108 preschoolers between the ages of 1 and 5. That's insane. 19 babies and 108 preschoolers. They say in 83 strikes, 3 or more members of one family died. The youngest to die was a 4-day-old girl, and the oldest was a 92-year-old man. I think that fact right there perfectly encapsulates what everybody in Gaza goes through. A 4-day-old girl and a 92-year-old man. And, of course, everybody in between. Now, among those killed were 96 confirmed or, quote, suspected militants, or in other words, just over 11% of the total. Now, they add the caveat, though the actual number could be higher since armed groups have not released detailed casualty lists. 11%. 11% is the number that they're giving. And I think if it could also be swinging the other way, too. They're saying, oh, the number might be higher. I think the number might also be lower because they're saying among those killed were 96 confirmed or suspected militants. So some of the so-called suspected ones may not be. So 11% is the ballpark number that we're looking at, and that's absolutely devastating. Imagine any attack anywhere where it's only an 11% success rate. I mean, it's a tautology to say that that attack shouldn't have happened if you're only getting 11% of the people that you want to get. Now, when you flip the script and you look at casualties on the Israeli side, you have, according to Israel, 67 soldiers dead and 5 civilians, with, get this, 4,800 Hamas rockets fired. So they fired 4,800 rockets. Virtually all of them didn't hit the targets that they were aiming for. And that fact also appears to me to show it's a perfect embodiment or encapsulation or sign of what this conflict is. You have one side that's totally outgunned, totally outmanned, is occupied and helpless, and you have another side that's backed by the world's biggest power. They have Iron Dome, which deflects most of these rockets. Anyway, you have all the guns, all the weaponry, all the power that there is, and they are the occupier. When I look at these numbers, man, the first thing that comes to mind is, imagine for just a second that the situation were reversed and that we had 66% of the dead in Israel were civilians, and we had a situation where 19 Israeli babies were killed, 108 Israeli preschoolers were killed. A 4-day-old girl in Israel was killed. The oldest 92-year-old man. If that was the case, how would the world react? I mean, there would be universal condemnation across the board. And they would say, oh, Hamas, they're even worse and more grotesque terrorists than we thought they were, and these savage, barbarian, crazy people, these genocidal maniacs that we're dealing with in the Palestinian territories, and they're doing the new Holocaust. You could understand and hear all these arguments. But when the situation is flipped, it seems to me like the only people who are screaming about it are progressives and Palestinians themselves, and maybe some other Muslims. But there's no conversation, there's no attempt, there's no serious, credible response that would perhaps prevent the next time this inevitably happens. In fact, after this, Netanyahu went on to annex more territory. He did this, and then he said, thank you, I'm going to steal more land now. And he did. And then the Palestinians stepped forward, and through Jordan and to the UN, they presented a peace deal, which, by my reading, was the most reasonable peace deal I've ever seen in my life. They said, okay, let's do the 1967 borders, let's get 2 states, let's recognize both of us, let's get full status, and any other details we can iron out if we sit down at the table and talk face-to-face. Let's do this thing, let's get a peace deal. Netanyahu rejected it out of hand. The Likud party said, no! How dare you? It's anti-Israel for you to even present that. It's a peace deal. They're trying to do peace. And this is after you killed so many civilians in their territories, and you stole more land. You guys know what my answer is. There's only one way that this is going to change. There's only one way. Because nobody's listening to the Palestinians. Nobody's listening to them. So what do we need to do? As the United States of America, we need to step up and we need to hold Israel accountable as our close ally. And what that means is cutting off all military aid, because guess what? They're going to be all right without our military aid, without the billions of dollars a year that we give them. Cut off all the military aid and sanction them. Treat them like apartheid South Africa and say, no. Unless you do a 2-state peace deal and you stick to it, guess what? Your economy's going to be fucked. That's the only way to approach the situation, because it's obvious that tales of human suffering in Gaza is not enough to make the right-wing Likud government and Netanyahu government do anything productive.